And God said, "Let there be
The
light."
Lord says, "Let my people go."
I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
This is the Talkin' Bible podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Talkin' Bible. Sitting down again with Aaron. Hello, Aaron.
G'day.
And today we're talking about, it's sort of like one of the only stories we have in the Bible of Jesus' childhood.
Yeah.
It's sort of this intermediary story, isn't it? It's in between. We've got a few birth narratives, and then we've got his ministry beginning, and then we've got this strange story of Jesus as a boy, 12-year-old boy, at the temple.
But it's kind of a precious story.
It is
as well.
Precious, yes.
It's something that I think every parent can sort of relate to.
Totally. Yeah. Having your child run off on you. I've had that experience before.
Yep.
And lose my child for 45 minutes in a crowd. It was not a pleasant experience. That was 45 minutes. This was basically 3 days.
Yep.
Yes, it's not a pleasant experience for poor old Mary and Joseph that they went through.
No.
Yeah.
But all right, so reading from Luke 2, 41 to 52.
All right. Are you going to read it out of the...
I'm going to read it out of the New Testament for
everyone. Yep. The Tom Wright version.
Mm-hmm. Jesus' parents used to go to Jerusalem every year for the Passover festival. When he was 12 years old, they went up as usual for the festival. When the feast days were over, they began the journey back, but the boy Jesus remained in Jerusalem. His parents didn't know. They thought he was in the travelling party. They went a day's journey before looking for him among their relatives and friends. When they didn't find him, they went back to Jerusalem to look for him. And so it happened that after 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Everyone who heard him was astonished at his understanding and his answers. When they saw him, they were quite overwhelmed. "Child," said his mother, Why did you do this to us? Look, your father and I have been in a terrible state looking for you." "Why were you looking for me?" he replied. "Didn't you know that I would have to be involved with my father's work?" They didn't understand what he had said to him. He went down with them and came to Nazareth, and he lived under their authority. And his mother kept all these things in her heart. So Jesus became wiser and taller, gaining favour both with God and with the people.
Oh, that's a famous little quote at the end. I've forgotten about that bit. It's a quote back to Samuel.
Samuel, is it?
Samuel, the boy Samuel, grew up and had favour with God and the people. It's a direct quote back to it. And think about that story, because Samuel's a young boy in the tabernacle, and that's where it comes from. Yeah. So there it is. It's a great little story, especially when you put yourself in it and imagine what it would have been like all round to be listening to Jesus having a conversation with the leaders, and to imagine what it would be like to be the parents and the family members. Yeah. So where would you like to go with the convo? What have you got in mind?
Well, I guess the first thing that comes to mind for me is 12 years old.
Right.
Because I think a 12-year-old in those times is different to how we think of a 12-year-old today. Like if you've a 12-year-old, I think would be considered more mature.
In those times? Yeah, I mean, they're about to have bar mitzvah. So, they're about to be considered mature as an adult, basically an oversimplified version. But yes, I think that certainly a 12-year-old in those days had a higher degree of expectation and responsibility than 12-year-olds do today.
Yep.
Make of that what you will, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think there's probably some strengths in it and some weaknesses, but it was the cultural norm, yes.
Yeah, so I'm thinking maybe that's why he sort of felt like he was able to make a decision like staying at the temple.
Yes.
And having a bit more autonomy over what he does.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, definitely. Because, you'd think that, well, if I went down the road with my 12-year-old and thinking they're in the car, I'd get down the car, wouldn't get very far before I realised they're not in the car. But, yes, maybe there was that sense of, and it certainly was, that a 12-year-old could be a bit more autonomous and, trusted to follow along or whatever the case might be. Yeah.
Yep.
And they're travelling in a big party. So a lot of people, one of the questions people ask, which is not a dumb question at all, you put it in the context, is to go, how the heck did it take so long for them to realise that Jesus wasn't with them? Basically, they travelled a day away, and they got to the camp a day's journey away, and that's when they realised that Jesus wasn't with them. And it would have been very normal to travel as groups and family coming from Nazareth. It's quite a hike. They would have all travelled, probably gotten down to Jericho or somewhere like that on a day's journey, set up camp for the night, and with the assumption, I think it's, with the assumption that Jesus is traveling among the family and with the friends and doing what 12-year-old boys do, having a game of cricket on the side while they running ahead so they can play cricket while everyone else catches up. That would have been a normal part of life. And then, of course, a day's journey and then a day's journey back and then a day looking around Jerusalem trying to find him. That's the 3 days, basically.
Yep. Wonder if that was the inspiration for Home Alone.
The original Home Alone. Yes.
Halfway to the destination on the flight, and suddenly realise that in the huge group of family, someone's not there.
The havoc of all of that, exactly. Yeah, yep. The havoc of realising you didn't have him. Yep.
Yes, but what was Jesus doing? He was in the temple, and I think we see a glimpse into, Jesus's personality, character.
Even at this young age,
cleverness.
Even at this young age, he has some, at least, developing knowledge of who he is, and it is important to recognise that scholars say it was a developing knowledge for him to do what Philippians 2 said, which was empty himself of divine privileges and come as a man or as a boy and grow up. One assumes that meant that he had to discover who he was through his relationship with the Father and through the Scriptures. And so by the age of 12, he has at least some rudimentary understanding that he's got a special relationship with the Father, because he says, didn't you know I need to be in my Father's house? And Mary must be thinking, he's your father right there. Well, they would have, but at least Mary and Joseph knew that he wasn't, biological father. But yes, he had some understanding that's developing. And I think that's part of why Luke's chosen to put this story in here, because it is, the only scripture of his childhood. Unlike the Gospel of Thomas, the apocryphal Gospel of Thomas, which was written much later. We were talking about this last week, actually, because I raised it. I've not read the Gospel of Thomas, although I've heard bits and pieces out of it. And then I listened to a podcast just this week talking about some of the apocryphal Gospels, some of the fanciful stuff they have in the apocryphal. And this was written 100 years after the Gospels. It's got stories of Jesus being hot-headed, Jesus walking on water as a young boy, all kinds of crazy stuff in the Gospel of Thomas. And yet I think what's remarkable about the Gospels that we have is actually how plain they really are, how non-supernatural they are compared to some of the more fanciful ones that were written later on.
That's interesting.
Which more in line with Greek mythology than they are with Jesus, whereas these are very anchored here. There's no miracle here. This is just Jesus going about his business.
Yeah. With
the Father.
And I think that's really an important point here, is that just that thing where Jesus really understood that point, that he's a child of God, that he's God's son. Yep. And that's, in a lot of ways, I think that's kind of the core of all of his teachings. Yeah. Really. That the understanding that, God is a loving Father.
Yes. Yeah.
It's kind of like everything just flows from that.
It flows out of that relationship he has with his father.
The foundation of it here, where he thinks, my family, I need to be about my Father's business. And I need to be in my Father's house.
In my Father's house. And that's some versions say about my Father's business, and some say in the house. But there's that realization that, yes, he has a family which is bigger than just his biological family, just his mother and father and his brothers or whatever. He's a part of something, a bigger story than that. Yeah. I love the fact that Jesus is developing that understanding and bring it in. And I love the fact that he's not standing there teaching them either. He's doing what we're doing now. He's sitting down with the rabbis and he's having a conversation. And I do think that we underemphasize that value, which is the Jewish way of learning.
Yep.
It's conversational, it's dialogue, it's small group conversation. It's not necessarily one person preaching. There is value in that, but I think perhaps we have made it. I don't know if we've elevated its value too much, but maybe we've devalued the conversation learning.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah.
I've been doing that in our church a few times lately. I'm thinking I might even do it again this Sunday morning when I record, when I preach, but just having more conversational style learning, because I think it helps people to get their actual questions addressed in real time, which is better than just listening to a monologue, I think.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, there's benefits to both, but you want to be making sure that, there's pros and cons to both,
Yes.
and you want to be making sure that you've got a good balance so that you can cover all of the.
I think that's important.
All of the positive parts.
Yeah, getting both parts. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So, just on that family thing, it says that they didn't understand what he had said to them. I think that can often be a thing for parents with 12-year-olds. That 12-year-olds can kids can get quite agitated at times when their parents just don't get it. But it's interesting that it says he went down with them and came to Nazareth and lived under their authority. It's like he didn't, or at least it doesn't say here that he threw a tantrum, that he got hot-headed.
No, it doesn't. I think that's probably quite unique. Jesus would have been a unique 12-year-old in the sense that he would probably, compared to his brothers, he was, it was always the other brother's fault. You know how you say it's brother's fault, well, you can never blame Jesus for anything. It's never going to be his fault.
Yeah. But
that's funny.
But yeah, it's like he... Again, it's that sort of setting aside of the divine, because I think if anyone could be, if any teenager could be said to be, it's right to argue with your parents in this situation, he probably could.
But even then, Luke makes a point of talking about, he seemed disobedient in that he didn't go with his parents at the start. But I think the point Luke's making is it wasn't disobedience, it was obedience to a higher law, a higher family connection.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Luke makes the point of going, hey, he wasn't wayward here. Once it was all clarified and he'd made the point and so on, he went straight back into his normal obedience to his parents' lifestyle.
Yep. And honouring his parents and honouring his family and
all those things that are required in the law. So even in the fact that he wasn't there, it's when when he didn't go with them, it wasn't so much dishonouring, it was more that he was honouring a higher call.
Yeah.
And there's complexity around that. No other 12-year-old's going to probably be able to have that claim on why they didn't obey, why they didn't do what they thought their parents would need them to do.
I'm saving the world here. Come on.
Yeah, exactly right. I think I've got more to do than follow you, Mum. But I think no other 12-year-old can do that. But Jesus obviously can, and it's a unique story. In that way.
Yeah.
But it's an encouraging story because it shows, one, Jesus' revelation of his Father, one, the significance of what he saw in the temple, which obviously will play out later in his ministry when he turns the table in the temple because he's so passionate about it being his Father's house, a place where people can meet with his Father, and yet they've turned it into a den of thieves, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so this is showing early passion for the Father's house, I suppose.
Yep. Oh, that's good. And I love that last little part of that where it says, and his mother kept all these things in her heart.
Treasured it up.
And I think Luke, this story is only in Luke, and I think Luke was compiled a little bit after some of the others.
Yes, most likely.
And it does seem like the sort of thing that, a mother would hold in her heart and maybe in her older age would have passed on.
Very much so.
And shared, and I think just that, I don't know, it's not really much of a theological point, but just the thought of that and the thought of how Mary would have felt about that, I think is really, really special.
Yes, and Luke alone has the story of Mary in the temple, just the chapter before this, and Simon coming and making that, Simon and Anna having those two prophecies about Jesus. And I think it's Simon says, and this child is destined to cause the falling and rising of many, and a sword will pierce your own soul. So, yes, I think that's a really good thought, that Mary, later in life, wizened years into the Christian church, because tradition says she lived to an old age, that, as a wise old mother of Jesus, she's looking back and reflecting back and going, you know what, I didn't fully grasp it, but look back, there was something about that encounter that was significant. And presumably she told Luke. Luke does say Luke carefully investigated. And like you said, it was written a little later. He's definitely has he used Mark's gospel, or has he used another tradition? That's the one scholars aren't sure about. They call it Q.
Yep.
There's potentially another Bible, or at least an oral tradition that Mark and Luke and Matthew all draw on, but Matthew does draw on Mark predominantly with a couple of bits and pieces, but there's enough for them to think there might be another tradition there. But Luke is obviously using all of these traditions and more to tell this story because he elaborates these kind of things. And I suspect that he had a conversation with Mary and got clarity, or at least spoke to someone who knew Mary well and reflected on that and incorporated this story, which is a beautiful story at so many levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that?
No, I think that's probably enough for that one. It's just good to know that Jesus knew his mission and was on about it from an early age. Thank you, Lord. You didn't give up at an early age. And even though you got lost, you weren't totally lost. Reminds me of a story. I remember Nicky Gumbel saying the Alpha course many years ago about how mum took the little boy who was misbehaving in to talk to the minister, and he sat him down in the minister's office because he'd been misbehaving, and the minister says, "So Johnny, where is God?" And obviously Johnny starts to freak out in his seat, and he looks at him and says, "Where is God?" And he says, and Johnny runs out of the office and runs back to Dad and says, "How'd you go in the church office, son?" And he says, "Well, Dad, the minister's lost God, and now he's trying to blame it on me too." And obviously a spin on this kind of concept here. He lost God, and now he's trying to blame it on me.
Yeah.
But Jesus didn't lose God. They potentially spare a thought for Mary losing the Son of God. Yeah. But, if you ever lose your child, you got this to go back. But there is this deep sense of awareness of who his father was, which is special.
Yeah,
I think, and it makes it humanizes the story to me.
Yeah,
this little story. Yeah. I'd like to know, I think there's probably more to it as to why scholars think it was inserted beyond what we've touched on here, but that'll do for today, hey?
That'll do, I think.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you on the next episode.
All right.